the St. Louis School District Rate Commission. I will be presiding over the public hearing this evening. The charter plan of the district was amended by voters in St. Louis City and St. Louis County at a general election on November 7, 2000, and established the Rate Commission. The purpose of the Rate Commission is to review and make recommendations to MSD's Board of Trustees regarding changes in wastewater rates, stormwater rates, and tax rates proposed by MSD staff. The Rate Commission seeks to ensure MSD ratepayers and the public in general have a voice in MSD's rate setting process. Per the charter plan, the Rate Commission is composed of 15-member organizations who collectively represent the broadest possible cross-section of MSD customers and the community it serves. Rate Commission member organizations are selected by MSD's Board of Trustees through a public self-nomination and selection process set forth in the charter. Each member organization serves a 6-year term, appoints an individual representative organization on the Rate Commission. Per the voter-approved changes made to MSD's charter in 2000, the Board of Trustees shall select member organizations so as to ensure a fair representation of all users of the district's services. Specifically, Rate Commission member organizations shall represent commercial industrial users, residential users, and other organizations interested in the operation of the district, including by way of example, but not by way of limitation, organizations focusing on environmental issues, labor issues, socioeconomic issues, community neighborhood organizations, and other nonprofit organizations. For a list of individual Rate Commissioners and the organizations that they represent, please visit the Rate Commission section of MSD's website at www.msdprojectleader.org. That's www.msdprojectleader.org. The Rate Commission received a rate change notice from MSD staff on March 24, 2023 for wastewater rates and stormwater rates and taxes. Per the charter plan, the Rate Commission must issue its report on the proposed rate change notice to MSD's Board of Trustees on or before September 5, 2023. The Rate Commission adopted operational rules and a procedural schedule to conduct its proceedings in a timely manner and with procedural fairness to all parties. Since the Rate Change Commission was received on March 24, 2023, since the Rate Change Notice was received on March 24, 2023, the Rate Commission has received testimony from MSD staff and the rate consultants employed by the Rate Commission to evaluate MSD staff's proposal. The parties have also engaged in discovery requests. Documentation of these activities is listed on the Rate Commission section of MSD's website at www.msdprojectleader.org. Tonight's public hearing is one of 14 on-the-record sessions planned for between June 21, 2023 and August 7, 2023. Any ratepayer who wishes to be heard on the proposed rate change may testify or participate in these public hearing sessions. The public hearings are publicly noticed by postings to the Rate Commission section of MSD's website at www.msdprojectleader.org. These postings contain the time, date, and location of each of the public hearings. As hearings are added to the schedule, the same information will be posted. Public hearings are held for the purpose of permitting MSD staff to present its wastewater and stormwater rate change proposal to the general public and to permit the public the opportunity to ask questions and to make comments. Those unable to or not wishing to provide comments at a public hearing may provide feedback to the Rate Commission via phone or email. The phone number is 314-325-2028. Once again, the phone number is 314-335-2028. The email address is ratecommission@ahcconsulting.com, and the email address is ratecommission@ahcconsulting.com. And the card with the contact information is available at the signing area where you came in. Alternatively, staff representing the Rate Commission who have asked to identify themselves shortly will also be able to provide that information information on how to provide feedback outside of the public hearings is listed on the Rate Commission section of MSD's website at www.msdprojectleader.org. Our next step tonight is a presentation by MSD staff, followed by a public comment period. Tonight's presenter is Brian Holscher, MSD CEO and Executive Director. Before we begin the presentation, I ask that we observe the following housekeeping rules. First, please hold all questions until the comment period after the presentation. Second, if you wish to present testimony in respect you may have questions or comments, please sign in at the door which you enter the room. Speakers will be called upon in the order they have signed up. Each speaker should identify themselves and the organizations they represent. While not a requirement, we ask that those speaking to state their name and address so that we may ensure we are associating comments in the record with the correct speakers. If you are representing an organization, please provide information about the organization. If speakers wish to remain anonymous in whole or in part, we will respect those wishes. Each speaker may have a maximum of 10 minutes to speak regarding the proposed rate change. As the presiding officer, I can limit the speaking time as necessary. If you have further questions regarding bathrooms or logistics, the staff raising the Rate Commission, representing the Rate Commission, and then ask the staff raise their hands. They are available to do those corrections. If you have not already done so, please establish your cell phones. Are there any questions regarding the procedures for this evening? Mr. Holscher, would you please begin this presentation?
Thank you, Commissioner Goss. My name is Brian Holscher. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. I'm going to do the presentation on the two rate proposals that are being evaluated by our Rate Commission. Before I start, my presentation is going to be on the rate proposal. Some of you may have questions outside of that with MSD, your own personal issues or something. I have staff in the back left corner here. They all happen to be wearing dark shirts. So they will stay until everybody's gone. If you have a question that's not involved with this rate proposal, they'll take your information. They may answer your question, but they may take your question, go back, and then contact you later with an answer. I'm going to break this into three different parts. One, something we call Tale of Two Systems. MSD actually provides two separate services, wastewater and stormwater, and they're both funded separately, and we cannot mix those revenues. So I'm going to try and provide an explanation and understanding of what those look like. Then I'm going to go through the rate proposal process and schedule, what we're doing with the Rate Commission, and what you can expect coming in the future. And finally, I'm going to do a somewhat detailed dive into the rate proposal and the two pieces we're proposing, one stormwater, one wastewater. They look different, but I'm going to go through those and actually show you some of the numbers as what the results would be depending on how the public votes in April 2024. First of all, so MSD protects the public's health and safety and water environment by responsibly managing two programs with separate funding sources. Again, one is stormwater, one is wastewater. However, as we continue managing the problems, what the challenges and successes are in each program look a little bit different. So I'm going to go down each one of those separately. Currently on the wastewater side, what do? We clean and repair the existing wastewater system. That's something we started very early on, really intensely about 20 years ago. It makes sure the system, the wastewater system that carries wastewater, works as well as it can. We want to make sure we're in compliance with environmental regulations. That's one of our requirements. Not only do we collect it, but we're under regulations from both state and federal government as to how we have to run and what our successes have to be. Then we're also doing major new improvements. Those improvements are almost exclusively driven by an agreement that MSD entered into with the EPA, Department of Justice, and Coalition for the Environment in 2011. Like over 200 other municipalities throughout the country all those municipalities, including us, were working towards being in compliance with the Clean Water Act. The federal government wanted to put an agreement in place that set a date certain that we would get there. And you will find that that somewhat drives the rates that we have to charge in order to be in compliance with that agreement. To show how much it really is driving it, the next you're going to see a proposed expenditure of $1.7 billion more over the next 4 years. 98% of that is either driven by scheduled projects in the agreement with the Department of Justice or to be in compliance with other federal regulations such as the Clean Air Act. There is not a whole lot of maintenance, preventative maintenance that goes into the capital program. It's mostly stuff we have to do right now. Where we're at right now, we reevaluate the value of that consent decree based on current dollars, and we continuously upgrade it. So you may have heard in 2011 when we signed the agreement, the value was $4.7 billion in 2010 dollars. When we got to 2021, we reevaluated again, not because the program had changed or gotten more expensive, but we did it in 2021 dollars. So that's 11 years later. And it was valued at $6.1 billion. Before we went to do this rate proposal, we've gone through 2 to 3 years of everybody's experienced the economy and what's happened with inflation. So we revalued the program again to make sure we have a legitimate starting point. So right now in 2023 dollars, we got the program valued at $7.2 billion. And as we go in the future, we'll continue to reevaluate the program, revalue the program. So as of 2024, next year, we will have completed $3.1 billion. Over this next 4-year period, like I said, is $1.7 billion. That will put us at $4.8 billion. That will put us halfway through the program, and we'll be about halfway through the 28-year term we have in order to complete this. The agreement ends in 2039. That's when we have to have all the work done. On the stormwater side, it looks a little bit different. So there's very little regulation that's driving what we do. If you look at the middle check mark on the screen behind me, compliance with environmental regulations, we do have a requirement like city does building permits. That if somebody does some work, we got to make sure that they put things in such that they will catch the pollutants that are in stormwater runoff, so they don't enter the creeks and streams. That's funded by a funding source that's been in place in some form since we were created in 1954. The second one is the cleaning, repair, and operation and maintenance of the existing storm sewers. MSD owns on the stormwater system the manholes, inlets, and storm sewers that exist, mostly along streets, sometimes backyards. The history of this, prior to 2016, all those assets that are inside 270 in the city of St. Louis, we had some money to operate and maintain them, but not enough. There were things we were falling behind on. Outside of 270, such as in Chesterfield, we were given ownership of those assets in 1989 without a revenue source. So we've owned the system. There is just nothing we could do to operate and maintain it. The public fixed that in 2016. The public voted yes to put a property tax in place. So now we regularly clean, regularly fix, go in and do repairs and replacements of the storm sewer system. It's in pretty good shape. There's one more service MSD can offer, and that's new improvements that don't involve MSD-owned assets. MSD doesn't own creeks, MSD doesn't own floodplains. Those are managed by other entities in the area. But we do have the ability as a regional authority to raise funds to cooperate with those municipalities and county and other entities and address things like erosion and flooding. We don't have funding to do that now. There's a few small taxing districts between the city and 270, but district-wide there is no funding to address those. So we think it's a good place to go. We think it's a good thing to offer the public. We have tried a couple times. The latest was in 2019. There was a proposition that went in front of the voters to provide funding to provide just those services, and it failed 53 to 47. So based on the response from the public, we felt it's appropriate for us to go ahead and offer it again. Not the same program. We've learned a lot talking to the public again. We're getting closer. what would help make this acceptable? What other provisions would you like? And I'm going to explain exactly what those look like later on in the program. The wastewater system improvements, the goals are twofold. They're to meet environmental regulations, and those consist of preventing backups on the wastewater system in the homes, not when the area floods and everything's underwater, but when there's a normal storm. And also, so there's another way the system relieves itself from stormwater getting into the system inappropriately. Throughout the area, there are places where the sanitary sewer system, when it surcharges because stormwater that's not supposed to be in it gets in there, folks we got some legacy issues of folks simply punching holes in the side of the system, like in manholes next to creeks. That allows that surcharged sewer to discharge the creek instead of people's basements. That's illegal. And so that was another one of the major things we had to clean up. We're well on our way towards really taking care of those two problems. Now, I will let you know the huge 100 and 500 year storms we've been having, they're going to cause basement backups as well. And not necessarily caused because the wastewater system is not working well, they're being caused because everything is flooded. Streets, yards, homes, everything. And that causes everything to flood. The way we've taken care of this, we've increased capacity in certain places where it's needed. When it was built and expanded, the entities at the time that were in charge of this maybe didn't make the sewers, they didn't increase the size. So if necessary, we've increased the size of the wastewater system. The biggest one was remove water where it shouldn't be. Think about our biggest issue, and this is the easiest one to explain, is the area between 270 and the city of St. Louis. A lot of the homes were built with the roof downspouts connected to the wastewater lateral. So instead of going to the storm sewer system, they went to the wastewater lateral. People were flooding themselves. People were flooding the sanitary sewer system, which then would flood their neighbors. A lot of effort to take care of those. It's called I&I, inflow and infiltration. Other examples, we found inlets, stormwater inlets connected to the wastewater sewer, we assume by accident at some point. Leaky pipes that allow groundwater to get in, it just uses up the capacity and causes basement backups in these overflows. So we're going after those also. I'll give you, next page, I'm going to give you an example of how successful we've been, because that was the front part of this agreement we had with the DOJ. Separate sewer system, wastewater overflows. So we had 230 of those in 2010 and 11. By the end of this calendar year, there will only be 30 remaining. That has been the main focus of the program. And that's mostly laying new, relocated, larger sewers, disconnecting stormwater connections. That part of the program has been going very, very well. The building backups are down 25%. Now, it's a little misleading. If we weren't having the types of storms we're seeing right now with climate change, and it seems like every 2 months somebody gets hit by a 500-year storm, whether it's in the neighborhood or the entire area, they flood the entire area. Well, the homes that get back, we count those as backups as well. So we've really taken that down. In the old days, what used to be a normal storm, very little response from the system as far as causing backups. It's working pretty well the way it's supposed to. To get all this done, we completed or in the process of completing 650 different projects as of today. Stormwater looks different. We collect data on problems throughout the area. Flooding, erosion, also other kinds of stormwater problems. Like I said, we're also a regulator in some effect. So it's good to collect those. Ultimately, if there's a funding source, that database of problems is the basis for us moving forward to take care of issues. The number of problems that get reported to us, they usually bounce up and down. Lately, they've gone up, and you can imagine why. We went through a period just with MSD where major rivers were flooding for 4 years from 2015 to 18. Before that, 2015, and especially after 2018, storms are coming over and they're not dumping what I used to think of as a nice rain. They're dumping 100 and 500-year storms in isolated areas. The amount of rain we're getting is the same. It's just coming down in an isolated spot a lot heavier and just inundating everything. Not just the sewer systems, but the natural creeks and streams, the roadways, everything. So we're collecting that data. The problems have been going up, but we want to know where they are. The only way we know what the stormwater program is going to be is by knowing where people believe the problems are. Just a little pictorial example, and this was a good one 20 years ago. This is probably a small one. This is what stormwater problems look like now. But it's water that sits around and just doesn't go away, doesn't get conveyed out. Sometimes that's caused by something as simple as neighbors grading things the wrong way. Sometimes it just wasn't built to accommodate that. Maybe not a lot of thought was put into it. There's changes that get made, or other things such as development prior to us having rules that prevented this, generating more water than what the system could take. So those problems exist throughout the district. We got a good log of where those are. The other one is erosion. So there's a lot in the newspaper for the most part, or in the media, about areas that flood next to creeks and streams, or next to small creeks, or just in low areas where all the water goes to. There are areas in the district, and there's a lot of them in North County, where people aren't in those flooded areas, but the banks of the creeks are seeing these additional flows for long periods of time, and they eat away the channel, and it can eat away their yards, garages, in some cases eat their homes away, ready to fall into the creek. So those are the erosion problems we're wanting to deal with also. Those are the two major things. They're not MSD assets, but if we had the funds, we could set up a program to start addressing these. So what are the improvements by watershed? So these are the problems we've identified. That shows up much better. So the pink area on the look, well, let's see where we're at. So first of all, the top of that screen is the Missouri River going along the north part of the county. The right side is the Mississippi River. Wiggling around on the bottom is the Merrimack River. And then our boundaries go out. We don't have the gray area in the county. Our boundaries go out to about Highway 109 in Wildwood. Everything to the west of that has not asked to be annexed into MSD's boundaries. They take care of their own wastewater services. You see in the pink area, you can see those numbers, 264 problems that have been identified. The reason for that is that's mostly where those small little taxing sub-districts that are legacy places, legacy taxes from 1960. We collect a small amount of tax and fix a few problems. I will guarantee you, as soon as we start fixing a few problems, everybody makes sure they report stormwater problems to us. If you see the rest of the area, and you can see the yellow one to the upper left where Chesterfield is, if somebody has a stormwater problem, they call MSD and say, thanks, we'll log it. There is absolutely no funding that's been approved by the public for us to address this. But we'll make sure the problem's there. After a while, people simply stop reporting stormwater problems, rightly so, because we can't do anything. What we're proposing will give us a fund to start addressing those. So the rate commission, or the rate proposal process, I won't go over this, but it is an independent rate commission with the process presenting our program to them, take a review. We come to them every 4 years primarily because of the wastewater system. The wastewater system whose schedule is driven by the agreement. We come back every 4 years, checking with the rate commission. Here's where we stand, here's different funding options, here's what we think we need to do. And they do a review of that every 4 years. And allows MSD to kind of true up its expenses and what the rates it's charging. It gives a chance for the rate commission to do oversight. This year, again, and this is, you add all the different types of activities, probably the 5th time we've tried to put some kind of funding in place for stormwater. We're going to come back with another stormwater program and see if the public would like to fund MSD to be involved in erosion and flooding. What the timeline looks like, the first box is 2023. I'm going to take you to the left of that slide in 2022. MSD will start putting its rate proposal together in the summer of 2022, based on what we know we have to do with regard to our agreements with DOJ, as well as input from the customers as to what's out there. So we complete that rate proposal. We got to the rate commission, as Commissioner Gossman had mentioned, in March. They have until September to review our proposal and make comments on it. They will present that to our board of trustees. They will consider the staff's original proposal. They will consider the comments made by the rate commission, and they will decide how they want to proceed. How they want to proceed is going to be reflected in an election that's going to be on April 2nd, 2024. There's 2 things that will be on the ballot, and I'm going to go over these in detail, but I want to give you a general description. One will be to fund the next 4 years of the wastewater program. Would you like to approve additional bonding authority so MSD can borrow money and spread out the cost of the program? Or is it the time where you just want to pay cash for the work we're doing? That's the decision we've offered to the public since we started this program, and I think the first one was 2002, was the first time we offered this to the public. That'll be on again. The other one, which is different, is going to be stormwater, and I'll explain what the rate is, the tax is. But there's a stormwater tax proposal to fund flooding and erosion, and the answer is going to be, here's the proposal. If the public votes yes, we will start providing the service. If the public votes no, we will continue to not provide the service because we won't have any funding. So here's the details. We still have that sample sheet, right? The flyer, the one-page flyer. Did everybody get a chance to pick that up in front? Okay, you have one. I want to make sure. So we're going to start with stormwater. This is not on the flyer, but again, if you don't have one, you may raise your hand and they'll get you one. So, stormwater rate proposal. How do we? There's two up here. I didn't necessarily see people looking at them, so I want to make sure I got it. There's one over here as well. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It's the whole room. Oh, okay. One up here also. Okay, I want to make sure you have that. So now the first slide I'm talking about is not on that sheet, but we'll go with it. So for the stormwater rate proposal, how did we develop the proposed rate? One of the things we did, we want to make sure we were equitable between the residential customers and the non-residential customers. So we took a measure of the impervious area throughout the district. Impervious areas, roofs, driveways, sidewalks, those types of things. It gives us a hint of who's generating the stormwater. We found that the residential customer base, based on the taxing definition, represented 57% of the impervious area. The non-residential customers represent 43% of the impervious area. This was important for us to set up a funding mechanism so that these two classes of ratepayers both paid their equitable share. For the residential customers, based on survey, and this has been true for the last 10 years, more than half of the voting public has indicated the amount of money they would want to spend to address this, the maximum amount is about $2 per month, or $25 per year. So what we've done is we are proposing a property tax of 2 cents per $100 valuation of the property. In MSD's boundaries, the median appraised value of a property is $176,600. That would be the halfway point. So that median customer will pay $2.08 per year. The rate is actually 7.45 cents per $100 valuation. So you can multiply that if your home is some multiple of 176, you can see how much you would pay annually on your property tax. They will generate 57% of the revenues. So to get the other 43% of the revenues, the non-residential customers, as opposed to paying on the property tax, will receive a monthly bill and will pay a bill that consists of $1.05 per 1,000 square feet of impervious area on their property. They'll pay that every month. That will result in them providing 43% of the revenues. Overall, the proposed program will generate $34 million per year. Now, the next question, now that we've got the money, how do we plan on spending it? And a lot of this is based on customer feedback that we've gotten. So we'll take 50% of those $34 million in revenues, and in these small taxing districts I mentioned, MSD has a benefit cost analysis. For every stormwater issue we know, we put a point value to benefits. If we're going to keep your 5 feet of your yard from washing in, that's just 1 point. If we keep your garage from falling in, that's more. If you keep your house from falling in, that's another point value. we add up all the points in the project, divide it by the cost, and end up with the benefit cost ratio. So for 50% of the funds, we're going to look at the issues we have district-wide, we're going to rank them, and we're simply going to go down the list of the projects that have the highest benefit cost ratio. That list of projects for the next 4 years is in the rate proposal. There's a list that names what the project, if this passes, it lists what the project is, what it's going to solve, how much it's going to cost, and what year it's planning on being done. So if you want to know what that exactly looks like, I think there's a measle map also that shows you kind of where the projects are. 30% of the revenues will be in the form of stormwater grants to the local municipalities. This is something we started doing in those small taxing districts, and the municipalities found that a good idea. If you think about MSD expenditure of 50, we're kind of addressing probably larger problems that cross municipal boundaries. We want to go at this from both ends. Municipalities have stormwater problems that are sometimes different than MSD's priorities. So the idea is to take 30% of the revenues and make stormwater grants available on an annual basis based on population. All it has to be is stormwater related. It doesn't have to match our priority system. It just has to be something stormwater. The city can make the grant, the application either for a year or the next 3 years, whatever the value of the project is. As long as it's stormwater, MSD will make the funds available to complete stormwater projects. It gives the municipalities to address something more at a local level to take care of some stormwater problems if they wish. The next, so I'm at 80% now, the next 10% will go to something, using the federal term, we call it Environmental Justice Fund. The state calls it underserved or low income. There's all kinds of definitions. But the state of Missouri provides a map to us, especially when we go for certain grants. It indicates where these areas are. For our district, they are the north part of the city of St. Louis, North County, moving west of North County, and there's an area just in South County, just south of the city of St. Louis that qualify. We're going to take all the projects we know in those areas, and we're going to do the benefit cost analysis, and 10% of the funds will be going down that list. We'll take the projects that rank out best, and we'll do those first. It allows us to address an issue that the federal government has indicated we need to make sure we address. So that's 90%. The final 10%. With everything I said, we're going to miss something. No matter how you do the math and what you select, something's going to be missed. We're going to assign 10%, or about $3.5 million a year, to something that is a regional priority. It's kind of a policy decision. Right now, our initial discussions have been with the Municipal League. Preliminarily, they have volunteered to be the entity that will take a look at this, and once every year, 2 years, or however much is needed, find a certain type of stormwater thing that's not getting costier, that 10% of those dollars, about $3.5 million a year, needs to go towards addressing within MSD's boundaries. I unfortunately have some examples. Last summer, we all hit 100 and 500-year storms, right? Should something be done to just simply start buying people out of floodplains that continuously flood? Would that be a regional priority that the Community League or representatives would recommend to the Board of Trustees? Should there be some kind of insurance program that would fund? Should you increase for a couple of years the amount of money you grant to the municipalities by putting this in that pot? There's all kinds of possibilities. What it would be is going to be based on advice that we get from an advisory group. Right now, like I said, the Municipal League seems to be the best place to go. We want to get everybody represented. The Community League at least has all the elected officials who would add the city of St. Louis, and so everybody would be represented. So that's the plan for how this would be spent if it passed. Now we'll talk about the wastewater rate proposal. Again, the current value is $7.2 billion. Again, I've told you how those have increased just because of the year that we're calculating them. Our program's on budget and it's on schedule. When you're dealing with the Department of Justice and the EPA, the one thing you don't want to do is get off schedule. We've made all the schedules we've set up and everything's working fine. What we're going to ask voters is, again, and I'll show you the chart in a minute what the impact is. Do you want to authorize an additional $700 million worth of bonding to start $1.7 billion worth of work over the next 4 years. The public gets to decide yes or no. Now, because of the agreement and the federal judge overseeing what's going on, we don't have the option of whether we do the work or not, but we are offering the public to think about where are we at in this and how should we fund it. This is on the back page. It's on one side of the flyer you just got. And this is always the piece that, quite honestly, the public really wants to look at and understand what's there. This is what happens. This is what you're going to be faced with in April 4th, this decision. So if you take a look at the left-hand side of the column, that shows what happens if the voters approve an additional $750 million worth of bonding. On the left-hand side is the yearly change, starting in 2025. The first year is 7%, the next year is 7.6, the next year is 7.5, the next year is 6.6. Unfortunately, the height of these is somewhat impacted by kind of really the inflation we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years. It kind of reset the starting point, unfortunately. But those are the numbers that we calculated. If you take a look, the average monthly residential bill is the number you see, the month what's paid. That doesn't mean you pay that amount of money. Again, for the most part, for wastewater, we measure your winter water usage per month. We use that as a basis for a full year as to how much water we think you are putting down the sewer system. So these are for the average customer. If you want to know what's going to happen to your bill, you can take those percentages, take a look at your monthly bill, and simply add that percentage to it. And that's how what your bill would look like over the following year, because everybody has a different bill. On the right is if the voters reject bonding. Again, we have to do the projects, but it's going to be paid for by cash. We just simply spend the money that folks give us. This is similar to every 4 years, if you decide you want to buy a new house and not get rid of the old one, do you want to pay cash every 4 years when you buy it, or do you want to borrow money? And then 4 years later, you're looking at another house, and that's kind of what we're doing. In this case, if the voters reject the bond financing, you see what the increases look like. They're pretty high, 35%, 35%. Then it goes down 20% just because of the cash flow of the program and the projects that are getting started, and then a 5.1% increase. Again, the numbers on the right are the average monthly bill, but they are a good comparison so you can see the relative impact between a yes vote or no vote for additional bonding. There are a couple items, this is being streamed out, so a couple items I want to mention. In the city of St. Louis, most residential customers do not have water meters. They are billed for water service by their city water provider based on the attributes in their homes. Bedrooms, water closets, other rooms, and there is a value assigned to that. That's the way the water provider bills them. The Supreme Court has ruled that we need to follow the practices and the information provided by the water providers, so we do that. We take those attributes and we assign flows to them. What we do every 4 years, we take a look at what those assigned flows per attribute look like, where do they stand. Based on this year's study, you take a look, and I'm going to look at the voter-approved bond financing. That first year in 2025, it says 7% increase. If you're in the city of St. Louis and you approve bonding, the first year will be a negative 0.8%. So it will be a 0.8% decrease, or negative 0.8%. Then for the following 3 years, the 7.6, 7.5, and 6.6 will apply. We try every 4 years, we go to see if we need to make a correction in those estimated flows. The other thing I want to mention is we do have a customer assistance program. So for those individuals, based on the number of folks in their homes, if they are under 2 times the poverty limit, they will pay 1/2 of their monthly charge for wastewater. If, based on our policy, like me, you are elderly, which means 62 or over, I know Mike is as well, so we have there's also another one, and that is stated at 2.5 times the poverty level. If your income is beneath that, you also will pay 1/2 of the actual charge that's calculated. That's our customer assistance program. As I walk away, I'm going to leave this up. This is a lot of the contact information that's been given you in different ways, but we'll leave this up on the screen. And Commissioner Goss, that's the end of my presentation.
Rate Commission staff, we need mass titles that are requested to speak.
Yes, the first speaker is Sandra Patrick.
Please remember to state your name and address for record if you represent the organization.
And I'm sorry, I thought there was a mic there, but it's a. Oh, okay. Okay.
How are you comfortable? How are you comfortable? This side is fine.
It's different.
Good evening, Commissioner Goss. My name is Sandra Paget. My residence address is 12 Dogwood Lane in St. Louis, Missouri, 63124. But tonight I'm here on behalf of Consumers Council of Missouri. I'm their executive director, and Consumers Council's address is 3407 South Jefferson Avenue, 63118. And I'm here to provide comments on behalf of Consumers Council. Consumers Council of Missouri is a nonprofit organization which works to build a more inclusive and equitable community for Missouri consumers. We scrutinize utility rate increase proposals, and we advocate for the maintenance and expansion of programs for households that have low incomes. We are submitting comments tonight regarding our concerns about MSD's proposal to increase rates by approximately 7.25% on the average each year from fiscal year 2025 through 2028. Many St. Louis area ratepayers are already having a hard time meeting ends meet, and the proposed increases will pose a challenge to those who are struggling to juggle the impacts of energy inflation. This year has been an especially expensive one for our region's utility customers. In November 22, the Missouri Public Service Commission approved an approximately 7% increase for Spire gas customers. In May 2023, the Missouri PSC approved an approximately 7% rate increase for Missouri American Water customers. On June 15, 2023, the Missouri PSC approved an over 5% increase for Ameren customers. And on June 23, 2023, the St. Louis Board of Aldermen approved an ordinance increasing residential water bills by 44% over the next year, with the first increase going into effect on July 1st of this year. Wastewater management is essential for health and safety, and MSD is the sole provider of wastewater management services in the St. Louis area. As indicated in the MSD's March 23, 2023 rate proposal, MSD falls between the 10th and 15th in the ranking of monthly wastewater bills for the 50 largest U.S. cities. So MSD's rates are higher than the national average even before the proposed rate increase goes under consideration would go into effect. Consumers Council has 2 advisory committees made up of area residents who are seniors, people with disabilities, people who live in majority-minority neighborhoods, and people who have low incomes. Our members have stated that they are having a hard time managing the steadily increasing cost of utilities. The proposed MSD increase, coming shortly after the Ameren, Spire, Missouri American Water Company, and St. Louis City Water increases, will present yet another challenge. Those on fixed incomes simply will not have the additional funds available, and many are already skimping on groceries and medication to pay their utility bills. We suggest the creation of an MSD customer assistance program that considers the energy burdens of customers in determining the amount of assistance. We also encourage MSD to create an outreach program so that ratepayers and community agencies are aware of the elements of such a program and applications for assistance can be quickly processed. I noticed in your rate proposal that there are approximately 4,200 people who are enrolled in your customer assistance program, and in your handout tonight you indicated there are 30,000 residential customers who are eligible. So we'd really like you to increase your outreach. We further encourage MSD to be transparent about the budget for the Customer Assistance Program by not only making this budget public, but also reporting the amount of money spent quarterly on the program. And finally, we encourage MSD to participate with Consumers Council in the creation of a low-income collaborative addressing the needs of households that have low income and focusing on the creation of customer assistance programs to meet ratepayers' needs. In conclusion, Consumers Council requests that the MSD Rate Commission limit its recommendation to only what is required to meet the documented and necessary wastewater operational needs and capital projects. And please consider the expansion of the MSD Customer Assistance Program to meet the needs of those who will be least able to afford any increase. And I did bring a copy of my letter that I offer for inclusion in the record. Thank you very much. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Our second speaker is Carl Kaminsky.
Well, I'm good. Thank you for the presentation. Great job. You answered all the questions. So.
And as Mr. Ross, you may accept questions from the audience if you don't have any wish.
Are there any other questions from anyone else in the audience? All right, well, seeing none, tonight concludes the first round of public hearings hosted by the MSD Rate Commission. The next series of public hearings will be held starting the week of July 17th. Dates, times, and location of those public hearings will be listed on the Rate Commission section of the MSD's website at www.msdprojectclear.org. Final public hearing is scheduled for 9 a.m. on Monday, August 7th at MSD's headquarters. The address for MSD's headquarters is 2350 Market Street, St. Louis, Missouri 63103. Thank you again for coming tonight.